manning the controls with GoToWebinar. And let me introduce our speaker today. His name is Seth Davies. He's our managing partner here at Competitive Solutions. And today Seth is talking about leadership fundamentals for first-timers and frontliners. Thanks again for joining us, and go ahead and take it away, Seth.
Thanks, Connor. Let me add my welcome to everyone that's joined us today on this webinar on leadership fundamentals. This is a topic that I could probably spend the next 3 days talking about leadership fundamentals and giving out tools, tips, techniques for leaders to be better engaged and engage their workforce for the betterment of the business. But unfortunately, we only have 30 minutes to do today. So what I'm going to do is I want to share with you 3 tools that you can immediately take and apply within your organization later today, tomorrow, next week, next month to start driving that engagement, to drive better communication, to drive better business results with your team on that. Let me share with you our agenda, what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about leaders' role in today's business environment. We're going to talk about what employees are looking for. What do they need from their leaders? And I've got some data from the readiness assessments that we do in organizations, and the readiness assessments where we look at what are the strengths, the areas of opportunity, and I'll share some stories with you around that. We're going to talk about how do you educate, facilitate, motivate your employees. How do you drive action and consistency within the organization? That's one of the things that employees are looking for. Is they're just looking for consistency in how you manage and how you operate. And then how leaders can communicate more effectively with individuals on the team. I'm not talking about communication in terms of a staff meeting. I'm talking about one-on-one, face-to-face communication. How can you as a leader adapt and flex your style to be more a better person and easier to communicate with and share information with folks within your team? What's a leader's job? Well, I believe the first thing a leader's job is we need to set expectations. We need to communicate what is to be done. When I talk about what is to be done, I'm talking about what do we need to do to advance the business forward. And I'm talking about communication. I'm talking about two-way, face-to-face. I'm sorry, but email is not a valid form of communication. Email, in my opinion, is advertising. We're throwing it out there. Hopefully, someone sees what we're talking about. So I'm talking about face-to-face communication on that. What's the next leader's job? We got to manage execution of tasks. We got to delegate tasks, and we got to get out of the way. And many times what I hear from employees is that my leader micromanages me to death. Give your employees a clearly defined goal and objective, a project and assignment. Give him or her a target date, and then let them go out and do it. And don't follow up until that target date, until that project is due. Allow them to do what you had hired them to do, which is help grow the business. We as leaders, we have got to do 3 things. We've got to educate, facilitate, motivate our employees. We've got to help them develop their skills. We got to provide feedback and recognition. And unfortunately, in many of organizations that I visit today, there's a culture of giving feedback when things aren't going so well. But when business is going good and employees deserve recognition, and it's not the leader's fault. It's just, again, it's the culture of the organization that it's not a culture of recognition. It's not likely that employee is going to receive that recognition. So we've got to start building that into it. We've got to talk about maintaining high morale and motivation on our team. And that manifests itself with business results. And then ultimately, what's the leader's job? Well, the leader's job is ultimately to get the business results, to improve the business, to improve profit, revenue, which in turn improves shareholder growth and profit. So those are the 4 things I believe is the leader's job within organizations. I'm going to pause now. Connor had mentioned at the outset that we've got 3 different polls today. And Connor, if you would launch our first poll of the day, and I'd really like to get a sense of the folks on the webinar. My organization leaders need to work on what?
Okay, we'll give everybody about 10 more seconds before we share the results. Okay, and here are the results.
Thanks, folks. Looks like providing feedback and recognition is your top area that you need to work on with or your leaders need to work on within your organization. I came across this data on a survey, and it was like, what are the top 4 things that matter most to the employees? And you'll see it there. Honesty. What they're talking about there is, don't lie to me, don't have secrets. Lies and secrets hurts credibility, and that in terms damages our relationship. Fairness. People want to be held to the same standard as their peers. So if you're treating one employee one way, you need to have that consistency and treat everyone on your team the exact same way. They talk about trust and the need for the employee to be trusted by you as a leader, but also they need to be able to trust their manager, their leader, with that. And then respect, talking about wanting to be respected, wanting to be able to air their viewpoints, their opinion on things, and people respect it. And by the way, the other 2 after respect were dependability and collaboration, what they're looking for. You're going to see at the end how I'm going to touch on 3 of those 4 and how 3 of those 4 tie to the tools that I'm about to share with you during our time together. So let's now talk about what are employees looking for, what are they expecting, and this that I'm about to share with you came from 4 or 5 readiness assessments that we've done end of last year into this year, asking employees what they're looking for. They want fair and ethical treatment from their leaders. They want a positive, productive work climate. And we're going to talk about work climate in just a minute, and I'll give you my definition of that. Open, effective communication. I look at communication 2 ways. One is the personal communication process, which is individual, one-on-one, and then also look at the team communication process. And I'm talking about weekly home team meetings where you come together for 30 minutes and you talk about the business and you share key business information with your team. Because one of the things that my firm hears is not all leaders are consistent in that, and there's some leaders out there that will meet with their team religiously on a week-to-week basis, and they'll share, hey, here's what's going on within our organization. Here's what I need you to know that's pertinent to you and it's pertinent to our team. And then there's other employees I talk to, they'll say, my leader never tells us anything. If I want to find something out, I'll have to go ask a peer in another department, or I hear about it at the rumor mill, the grapevine. So we've got to have open, effective communication with our employees. We've got to empower our employees. We've got to give them the tools to do their job, and we've got to empower them to let them go out and do what they need to do to help the business grow. Recognition. We've got to start creating a culture of recognition in our organization. And by the way, the recognition that employees want, it's the intangible, informal type of recognition. They don't need another T-shirt, another coffee mug that says job well done. They want the handshake, the pat on the back that says, hey, we talked about what you did, how you helped our business. Thank you very much. Because when you provide that type of recognition, the peers see it and they see what are the behaviors that our organization needs. They want consistency. And I have a saying that I utilize. We need to learn to manage by process, not by personality. And when I talk about personality, if you think about your team, you probably have got, say you've got 10 folks on your team, you probably have 2 or 3 people which are your go-to people. Every time you need something done, any type of project, you go to one of those 3 people. And pretty soon you see that favoritism come about. What you're going to see is you're going to demotivate the other your other 7 on the team, because they're looking out saying, why is Dave and Jamie and Kathy, why are they always getting all the assignments? So we got to be consistent in how we manage. We got to manage by process, not by personality. Let's talk about what leaders need to do for themselves. Well, first, they got to do a self-assessment. They got to know what's their leadership style. They got to create a plan for developing their own skills. They've got to leverage tools and processes for personal and professional growth. And some of you may be on this webinar today as a developmental opportunity saying, hey, what are some things that I can do to be a more effective leader for my people? For their team, we got to create a productive work climate. We're going to talk about that in just a second. We got to provide effective tools, and I'm going to share with you 3 tools for you to utilize within your team. We got to implement supporting processes. And for me, the key word there is processes, because what a process will do, it will bring about a desired, consistent result. So if we got the supporting processes in for that winning culture, now you're on the road to success. Now you're on the road where you're increasing employee morale, increasing engagement with your team. We got to learn each member's style, and at the end of my presentation, I'm going to talk about the 4 different communication styles and how, as a leader, we need to learn how to flex. So if I'm going to have an interaction or discussion with Michael, I know what style he is, and I can make adjustments so that we can have a productive, meaningful conversation around that. You've heard me on the last 3 slides talk about work climate. Well, let me talk about what's the work climate by my definition. Prevailing atmosphere, what it feels like to work in an organization, to work in a place. And what employees are looking for, they want a positive work climate. They want a climate where there's high morale, there's good communication, where there's recognition. Well, obviously, probably more than likely, leaders don't want the same thing. What they want is a productive work climate. So how do you put the two together? How do you marry productive work climate and positive work climate? Well, I believe you've got to have tools and processes, and that's why you're here today, folks, because you're going to get 3 tools that are process-based that will help you build that foundation of honesty, trust, and respect. And if you go back to that slide that I talked about earlier about the top 4 things employees looking for, honesty, fairness, trust, and respect, we're going to touch on 3 of those in our remaining time together. Connor, I'm going to pause. If you would launch our second poll of the day and see what our participants' work climate is like.
Okay, about 10 more seconds for you. Okay, and here are the results.
Folks, just if it makes you feel any better, our first webinar at 10 a.m., the majority of folks said that the answer was number 3. It's okay, but it could be better. What I want to do in our remaining time together is I want to help you make your work climate better. And let me share with you the 3 tools that I believe you can take away and start utilizing with your folks today. First one's a Team Scorecard, and if you've been on our webinars before, you know what a big proponent I am of connecting people to the business, of having a scorecard process in place to measure. And that scorecard is going to do several things for you. One, it's going to educate your workforce, your team. It's going to provide a common business language. So when people are talking about budget variance, or they're talking about customer service response time, or they're talking about a lost time accident, everyone on the team knows exactly what we're talking about because we've got that common business language. Next thing it's going to do is going to facilitate meaningful discussions. And think about your team right now. What's the only thing everyone on that team has in common? The only thing they have in common is the business. At the end of the day, they get in their cars, they go to different geographic locations, they take their kids to athletic activities, some may play golf, some may go for a run. So the only thing we have in common is the business. So when we're together, let's have a meaningful discussion about the business, and having that scorecard present, that will tell us if we're winning or losing, and what are the actions, the countermeasures we need to take to drive that business forward. And then the third thing that scorecard will do for your team, it will motivate them. And I see organizations where on Monday morning you can walk in and you can look at the scorecard for the entire organization, how they perform against their stated goals and objectives. And then you can look at the scorecards of 10 teams, 12 teams, do what we call a metric comparison. If I'm looking at my scorecard and I'm seeing a lot of red, and then I'm looking at the other 9 scorecards and I'm seeing a lot of green, it's going to motivate me. It's going to motivate my team to go out and strive to do better. And we may ask questions of some of the other teams to say, what are you doing to drive that metric to green? So the scorecard will motivate your workforce. Next thing it'll do, it's going to allow us to know what's expected. What are the behaviors as an employee I need to exhibit on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis to help my team be successful? If we're going to hit that customer service goal, if we're going to hit that cost metric, if we're going to hit that quality metric, what are the behaviors that I need to exhibit and my team needs to exhibit? Because now we're part of that team, and we're driving that business forward. And now we can have an open and honest discussion because the data's right there. We're having a data-driven discussion about team performance. And any metric that's red on that scorecard, we're not going to say, well, let's hope next week's a better week. We're going to talk about what do we need to do differently. Many organizations' teams will have scorecards, but it's simply a thermometer. It just tells them the temperature. I want you to think about scorecards as a thermostat. You talk about what's the temperature, but then you've got a platform to discuss it. It becomes a thermostat. All right, so we're not meeting our goals and objectives. What is it we're going to do differently as a result of that? Let me show you what a scorecard looks like. This is the scorecard template that I utilize and my colleagues utilize here at Competitive Solutions when we're working with a company. First column is the key business focus area. What I like to see is a senior leadership team or leader of the team develop what are the 4 to 6 key business focus areas. And I call these missions or themes or big buckets. Typically they may be something under cost, productivity, safety, customer service, people. Big buckets that the leaders define. And then that scorecard, that template that you see, it then gets taken to the team, and the team comes up with the SMART objectives. And the team says, all right, under the area of quality, what can we do to support the company's strategic goal there? Underneath cost, what's 2 or 3 metrics? Underneath productivity, what are 2 or 3 metrics? So I want the team coming up with the objectives underneath that. Next, the target. What we have to be above or below to be red or green. Owner. This is the person that can walk into the meeting on Monday morning and speak to a metric on the scorecard. And they can say, yes, we missed our budget variance metric last week. Here's why we missed it. And here are the countermeasures, the corrective actions that we're taking to drive it forward. Then you'll see the tracking frequency. I really like metrics on a weekly basis. So before the end of the month comes around and we've missed the target, we can get out in front of that metric at week 1, week 2 with corrective actions. Then visible indicator. I like red or green. I'm not a big fan of yellow. I can debate that with you at another time. But I like red or green. We're either winning or we're losing. So that's my scorecard view right there. Let me show you a scorecard from an actual team. What jumps out at you when I show that to you? Well, what I see is I see a lot of red in the area of quality. I see a team that needs to come together. They need to talk about why are we red and what are we going to do about it. Very visual. Within 5 to 7 seconds, the team knows if they're winning or if they're losing. So looking at a scorecard, why take the time to build a scorecard? What's the value for the leader with that? Well, it provides a common business language for our team members, so we're all talking the same thing. We're going to connect our employees to the overall mission. What I like to say is the overall mission is really the strategy. What are the 4 or 5 strategic goals the organization has over the next 2 years? Let's take the scorecard, and that becomes our tactical piece of how we implement the strategy. It's a focal point around influencing morale and motivation. Hey, if there's a lot of green on that scorecard, we're going to have high morale on our team. People are going to be feeling good because they're doing the right behaviors. They're doing the right things. But it's also going to motivate us because if we got some things on there that are red, we need to come together around the conference room table and talk about it. Why are we red? It's going to motivate that continuous improvement mindset. And then it creates ownership and buy-in. The DNA of that team is in that scorecard. They've taken the time to develop, given some parameters by the leaders, but they've taken the time to come up with 2 or 3 metrics underneath each key focus area. So at the end of the day, they may have 15, 18, no more than 20 metrics on their scorecard, but the key is they've created that. And this is a theme you'll hear throughout. They've got a clear understanding. Are we winning? Are we losing? Are we doing the right things to help the organization be successful? So let's transition from tool number 1 over to tool number 2. And let's talk about an action register. And let me give you some pointers on an action register with that, how it's going to help you as a leader. 1, you can delegate and get out of the way. And what I mean by delegate is you can give an employee an assignment, a task. You can give that employee a target date, and then you can just get out of the way, and you can have that level of trust that they're going to get it done because you've spoken with them about it, and you've given them a target date. And I encourage you as leaders, if you give your employee an action with a target date, don't micromanage and every day say, how's that project coming along? Wait until that target date comes. Build that trust with them, because one of the things I hear is our leaders micromanage too much. Give them the action and the target date. Let them do it. Next thing the action register do is it's going to help you prioritize what needs to happen today versus what needs to happen this week. Because when you lay out everything on the action register for the employee or for the team, you can then say, all right, well, this has got to get done before this one's got to get done. So now we can start prioritizing what's important and what's urgent. Eliminate selective engagement. It goes back to what I talked about earlier about managing by process or managing by personality. Selective engagement, my definition, it's the employees that don't actively volunteer. They don't get assignments and tasks. What I want is I want everyone on that team, if you got 10 people, I want that workload equally distributed. I want everyone to have that collective accountability on your team. And if you've got some employees that have that selective engagement mindset, they probably either need to step up or step out of the organization, because you're creating some frustration among other members of your team, and they're saying, why am I working as hard as I'm working when I look over and I see Ann, she's hardly doing anything. And then the fourth thing that action register will do, it's going to reduce the need to follow up on tasks. Many times you talk to an employee in the hallway, say, hey, I need you to do this, and they're thinking to themselves, one, well, Dennis is going to be on vacation next week, so I know he's not going to follow up with me about it. And two, I know he's real busy, so he'll probably forget about this discussion 30 seconds from now, so I'm not even going to do that because I know there's going to be no follow-up, so why should I follow through? Let's document these critical assignments tasks, give target dates, give ownership to them, and move on. Here's an action register template that I put in the companies I work with. The first column, action, what someone wants to do. And you see it's document critical tasks, assignments, ownership responsibilities. When you hear terms in a meeting such as I will, someone should, let's do this, those are action terms. Those are employees saying they're going to do something. Let's capture it the first time, not spend the next 4 weeks talking about doing it. And my rule of thumb on an action is this, and I know we live in the world of Twitter and text messages and you got 140 characters. If that action is a half page long, I'm okay with it. I want it to be as specific as possible so we can remove ambiguity. Owner, one person. You cannot have 3 different people on there. You cannot have Anthony, Randy, and Rebecca as the owners of that action because it'll never get done because they will all think the other person is going to do it. The owner must be physically present when you give them an action. You can't say, well, Will's on vacation this week, so let's give him all the actions. Physically present. Target date, there's some actions that may take 30 minutes to do. Target date's a week from now. There may be other actions that are larger, strategic in nature, maybe 3 months from now. Let's put that target date on there, and again, let's not micromanage it because when the target date comes up, that's when we can follow up. The completion date, was it completed early? Was it completed on time? Was it completed late? If it was completed late or completed early, let's put in the comments field why. Let's have that history of that action because it's also going to give us a history of the performance of that employee. You'll see an action register there, screenshot, and this is software that we have at Competitive Solutions, PVL scorecard software that our client companies utilize to manage their scorecards, manage their actions. But you'll see the first column action, what must happen. What does it apply to? Does it apply to something pertinent to the team, or does it apply to a metric on the scorecard? And again, any metric that's red, you've got to come up with a corrective action plan. You'll see the responsibility. You see one person's name, not multiple. And then the target date, red one's past due, yellow one's due in the next 7 days. So the action register, let's tie this up. How is it going to benefit you? What is it that's going to make your life easier that you can manage less and accomplish more? Well, we're going to start building that work climate of trust. We talked about trust was one of those top 4 issues. We're going to see visibility to the workload. What are the commitments that I have? What are the commitments that Sharon has? What are the commitments that Anna has? What are the commitments that me as Anthony, as the leader, have? So now we can see what the workload looks like. It's a tool to follow up on those commitments. So now we talk about things, we assign things. Now we've got a way to follow up, make sure they get done. It's true employee empowerment too. Here's what I need you to do. Here's why I need you to do it. Now you go do the how. And I'll circle back with you 7 days from now. Opportunity to get everyone engaged. You got a team of 10. You can look at the action register. Who, in your opinion, is actively engaged? Who's not? All right, well, I'm looking at the action register. I see Seth hasn't had an action in the last 30 days. I'm going to go engage him, and I'm going to give him this action. Tool number 3, as we're moving through this, is called what we call the D.A.R.E communication assessment. And what the D.A.R.E communication assessment is, it is a way to identify and understand what are the communication style preferences or differences of people in my team. And this is going to tie to one of the statistics that we talked about before about respect, the need to have respect in the team. There's 4 D.A.R.E styles. I'm going to go through each one, but it's also going to help us improve working relationships. And when I teach this to my client companies, there's a lot of ahas that take place with folks on the team that say, now I understand why Dennis is the way he is. He's not a grumpy person. That's just how he is when it comes to information. So it's going to help us identify how people like to receive information and share information. Great teams have a mix of all styles. When I show you the 4, if you were to take the survey that we have, the 50-question survey that we have, you're going to have traits in all 4 areas. But the key is you got one style that's dominant. That's going to be your dominant style. And I've been doing this for 17 years. I've yet to find a team where there wasn't at least one style represented, which brings a nice, robust balance to that team. And then I talked earlier about flexibility. As a leader, as you go interface with your team members, you can say, all right, I know that Michael's a driver. I need to flex to meet his needs. Hey, I know that Seth's an analytic. I need to flex to meet his needs. So we can have those meaningful discussions. We can have better relationships because we're meeting the individual communication needs of folks on our team. So let me walk you through these 4 communication style preferences. The first one is driver. You'll see there they tend to be people-oriented but also introverted. A driver will make a decision very quickly. They make a snap judgment. Now, whether it's right or wrong, doesn't matter. They make a bad decision, they'll own up to it and say, hey, I made that decision, I'm accountable. They can get impatient with people. They're the ones that when you call them on the phone, sometimes the discussion will go like this. Hey, how can I help you? Or you walk in their office, what can I do for you? They want to get right to the point. They don't want the small talk. Next communication style are the analytics. Analytics are people that need a lot of data. So if you're going to go interface with an analytic and ask them to make a decision, you may want to walk in and present them a lot of data, maybe 4 or 5 pages, and say, Seth, here's the information. And then the key is this. You've got to give them a deadline. You've got to say, I'll be back here tomorrow at 4 to discuss this with you, and I will need a decision. Analytics, data-driven. Slow to act, though, so again, you've got to give that deadline on that. Let's talk about the next one, the relator. They focus on the process and outcome. They're the ones, they don't want feelings to get hurt. So they're going to ask others, hey, tell me what you think. Sometimes they may agree with the majority because they want to, they don't want to upset people or hurt feelings. They have a hard time making decisions sometimes as well. They're like analytics, they're introverted with that. And then our final one, the expressive. Expressives make decisions based on emotion, not data-driven decisions. Sometimes it's based on what looks good, what feels good. You walk into their office, may have a lot of pictures of their family. So they're very emotional in their decision-making processes with that. Again, it is very important to have all 4 styles to create that balance on that team. So I'm going to pause here, and let me continue on this next slide. So what's going to help us do this D.A.R.E surveys I just talked about? Better communication, better understanding, because now we've got awareness of the 4 different communication styles on our team. It allows for leaders to engage everyone. So again, if I'm going to interface with an analytic, I know how to engage them. Same with the driver or relator. Helps us provide feedback and recognition. I need to flex my style to meet the needs of that employee. I cannot emphasize this enough, folks. This is not a personality tool. You can't change someone's personality, but you can flex to meet their communication style preference. So I'm going to pause here now. Connor, our third and final poll of the day, I just want to get a sense from our participants, which of the 3 tools I just presented is the most valuable and beneficial for them?
Okay, about 10 more seconds. All right, and here are your results.
Interesting. Very differs from our first group, but you see the scorecard and the action register being neck and neck, but the D.A.R.E is the most valuable tool for you. So let me wrap this up, folks, and include here. What I've shared with you, Leadership Fundamentals Toolkit, I've given you 3 tools. The first was the scorecard. Answers, are we winning or losing? Helps with honesty. Can have meaningful discussions around performance. We talked about the second tool, the action register. Helps us engage to make sure that everyone on our team is engaged. We've got that accountability built in because we've got clearly defined actions with target dates on it. Then the third was the communication analysis, and helps us have better open communication with honest feedback, and it touches on respect. that we can respect people's different needs that they have within our team. Connor, it looks like we got about 90 seconds left. Is there any questions that came in during our time together?
Absolutely, and like I mentioned in the beginning, we won't be able to get to every one, so we'll make sure and reach out to those folks that we can't answer right now and answer by email or phone. But here's, we had a few people ask, when you first introduced the scorecard, you mentioned something about making sure that the team is involved in developing the scorecard and why that's important. So we had a few people ask if you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen too many times where a team is presenting a scorecard and it was developed by a business analyst or someone in finance or a college intern, and the team's looking at that scorecard saying, this isn't relevant to us. This isn't what we do. How can they ask to measure us when they have no idea what we do? So that's why I want the DNA of that team. I want that ownership, that buy-in, so that team can measure it, and then they can come together and they can talk about performance, and they can talk about what are the countermeasures that we need to do to help our business go forward. One more, Connor?
Sure. As with our poll indicating there, D.A.R.E was a pretty popular section, and we had a few different people ask about really just how do you actually do it? What do you do to know your style and know your employees' preference as well?
Yeah, and folks, I'm sorry, I really didn't do D.A.R.E justice in terms of how powerful that tool can be, but we've got a 50-question survey that we've run our client companies through, and again, you'll have, when the survey's over with, you'll have, as an employer, as a leader, you'll have a dominant style, but you'll also have the other three styles in there. So that gets done, it gets published, so then the team can look at see what the leader is, they can see what their individual team members are, and then they can have those better working relationships because now we've got a foundation of respect, of understanding people's differences on that. Folks, I want to thank you for joining us today. Our next leadership event where you can learn more about some of these leadership tools and techniques here in Atlanta in November 8th and 9th. It's going to be a great event. We've already got several people signed up for that. So if you're interested in becoming a better leader, this is a good next step around that. And then next month, in September, we'll talk about continuous improvements, the what and the whys, and how-tos of doing that. So thanks for your time today, and make sure you participate in the survey and give us your feedback on the way out. Thanks. Have a great day.